Welcome everyone. Today's topic is saving thousands on your deals by learning more about home inspection. And we have a very special guest tonight, George Hyatt, licensed home inspector. So welcome, George. Thank you for joining tonight. And friends, the reason why we brought George, because it is so critical for you to have your inspection done by somebody who knows the entire systems of the property. So, George, welcome and for joining tonight. Let's get started.
All right, thanks for having me.
Okay, so what we're going to start is with an inspection report. This is a property that George inspected last Friday. So we're going to go over the report. So the objective for you, for all of you, is to understand what to look for when walking a property, okay? But most importantly, George, do you want to mention the difference between the walk-in inspection and the one where you give them the report? And very quickly.
Sure. I offer two different types of inspections for investors only. One is called a walk and talk, which is still a full inspection, but you would take the pictures, you take the notes. The other way, we can still do it the other way, the old-fashioned way, which is do the full inspection. I take all the pictures, I take all the notes. So, and what you're going to see today is a full inspection for this investor. But we typically would like to see newer investors get the inspection done with a report. That way you can refer back to it and take and look at the pictures and have a list of all the defects in your possession. So it doesn't matter to me. I do it either way. Average house, 1,500 square feet or smaller. It's $250 for the walk and talk, and with the full inspection with a report is $375, and then it would go up from there.
Perfect. And friends, let me tell you how we use the inspection report. So my suggestion is to always pay for the report. Not only for the reasons that George brought up, that you can refer back to the items that you need to fix, but most importantly, friends, for us, this is a tool. This is an investment. It's an insurance to go back to the seller and request a credit on the repairs. So for us, we've paid, let's assume, $400, $500 for an inspection report, and we typically get thousands back in credit. So friends, think of this as an investment, as leverage, okay, in the negotiation. So always, there's no reason why you should not get the report, okay? It's gonna be very advantageous for all of you. Okay, George, so let's get started.
Okay, so this property, I wanted to thank Raheem for letting me use this report, but this property was in Homewood. Typically, I always ask people, are you going to keep this as a rental or are you going to flip it? It doesn't really matter as far as the inspection. It's done the same way. It's just, and then my next question following up to that would typically be, what's your budget? And then that way I can kind of judge if their budget is in line with the rehab that needs to be done for a rental as opposed to a flip. So this guy, I think we talked last night about, I think he paid $156, $157 for this property. He initially thought he did $25,000 in work to do a flip. After I did the whole inspection, I really highly doubt that he'll be able to stick to those numbers for a flip. So we ran the numbers also as a rental, and it just made no sense to do it as a rental either. So my opinion, I think he maybe overpaid a little bit for this house. So, but that's not for me to decide. So I'm just there to do the inspection. So anyhow, with that being said, let's move on. And just so you know, I'm doing the same exact thing as all of you are doing. I flip houses. I am trying to grow a portfolio of rental properties at this point. So I'm in the same ditch as you guys are and looking to do the same thing you're trying to accomplish. So I've done about 40 transactions, so I know a little bit about rehabbing houses. So I just don't want newer investors to get hurt and do one deal and be out of the business. So maybe I take it a little too far, but I take it personal for your personal success. So, all right, so we're up on the roof. We double checked the roof. When I walked up to the roof, it looked like it was nearing the end of its life. He wasn't planning on doing a roof, so I also look, if he's doing a flip, that there's going to be an inspector representing a buyer in the back end. And just because I don't call it out doesn't mean that the next inspector is going to tell the new buyer that they're going to need a new roof. But this roof maybe has 3 to 5 years left on it. So now he's reconsidering if he should do the roof or not. So you can't really tell by these pictures here, but here you could see there's a broken shingle here with the nails sticking out, and then right below it, there's right at the middle of that picture, you'll see a line with a nail head sticking out. That's definitely needs to be fixed. Any nail heads that are sticking out of a roof should be caulked because we live in the Midwest, and over time those nail heads will start to leak, and then the water will end up going into the house. So, and then you could see in these pictures, it's hard to tell. On the one on the left is the shingles are starting to lift up. That typically the tar strip below is wore out, and that's typically why they start lifting. And the picture on the right is not as clear, but those shingles are also starting to lift up, which is shingles should lay flat. And when they start lifting up, that typically means that they are wore out. And when we get further down in the inspection, I'll show you all of the remnants in the gutter of what's happening. So typically here, this siding is too close to the roof. The shingles hold moisture, and moisture gets sucked up through the wood. I don't know if you can see, but it's right at the bottom of the siding there. It's starting to flake. It's starting to discolor. My recommendation to him was to cut that siding about 1 inch off the top of the roof. So if that makes sense. So we don't want that water wicking up into the siding. Also, you can see in this picture, this is the chimney. They nailed it. You can see the 2 nails here are missing. The one in the middle is exposed, and that flashing is actually sticking up about 1/2 inch. So that would need to be re-nailed down. And then I would recommend caulking the holes and caulking the tops of the nail heads to keep water from penetrating into the roof. So basically when we start, I usually start on the outside and then I work from the top, from the roof all the way down. So everything that I can potentially see, I inspect. As I was telling you before, inside this gutter looks like dirt. It's not. It's actually the granules from the shingle. And there's a lot of granule loss on these shingles. And the granule loss, or the granules, is actually what protects the shingle or protects the roof. In this bottom picture, you can see I dug through that, and that is probably about 1 inch to 2 inches thick of granules in the gutter. So you could tell that roof is pretty much on its last leg. Downspouts, I'm pretty anal about downspouts. I've seen downspouts create a lot of damage on houses over the years. The one at the top picture here is smashed, so that's not a big deal. You just got to cut the bad part off. But typically we like to see the downspouts about 4 or 5 feet away from the house. You don't want that water anywhere close to the foundation. And then in the bottom picture, you can see where the downspout extension came apart, and they just basically need to put that back together. In this picture here, you can see on my note here on the left of this picture, but the roof needs to breathe, meaning that you need fresh air coming in, and then the hot air goes out the roof. Well, in this soffit, there's no vents, so there's no way for any fresh air to get into the attic. And if the attic cannot breathe, it typically will wear out the shingles twice as fast. Typically, we'll see discoloration in the attic. It could potentially start molding. So that's why I recommended that and it's not that big of a fix. It's something that needs to be fixed to prevent future problems. And the next inspector that comes in after me is definitely going to say something. This is a simple fix. This is the fascia. You can see it's starting to pull away a little bit. It's as simple as putting a couple nails in there. If you left it like that, wind can get behind there, rip the fascia off, and then you're going to have a heck of a time trying to match the fascia. Even if you could get another piece of black fascia, it's not going to match because the one side is going to be weathered and the other side is going to be new. So on all the doors and windows on this house, the caulk was starting to deteriorate where the wood meets the brick. You can see it's broken away there. We don't want any water to penetrate in between the two materials, and it could potentially start rotting out the wood. I want to say one more thing, Hugo, while I'm thinking about it. Some of you that are trying to get private money, a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but I know particular private money lenders will want to see a copy of this report in order to fund your deal. So, and I'm talking pretty much about Dr. Ali. I don't know if any of you know him, but good friend of ours, and I know he requires a inspection report for any deal he is going to fund for you. So, all right, so you can see here around the windows, and this is a very simple fix. If you're somewhat handy, you should be able to do this yourself, or a handyman could do it. A tube of caulk is about $3. But I would cut all the old stuff out, scrape all the loose caulk out, and then I would re-caulk it. All right, so this is more of a cosmetic defect, but if you could see where my finger's pointing and the one above it, the wood is actually starting to rot. If this was my house, I would just take some black aluminum, just like the fascia or the soffit, and I would wrap this wood. That would probably be the cheapest fix for that, instead of trying to cut the bad stuff out and replace it. Because there's enough good wood there that they can nail the fascia or the aluminum to and caulk it, and it looks beautiful once again. A lot of your window companies will do that too, instead of changing all the wood around the window, unless it's totally disintegrating. They'll take the aluminum and they'll just attach the aluminum to the wood instead of replacing all of the wood. So, I always recommend for rental properties, I like mine to be maintenance free, so I don't want to have to go back in 2 years or every 2-3 years and have to paint. So if I can make it maintenance free, I will do that. So this bottom picture is where the siding for the front of the house, and as you can see where at the bottom here, where this is all mulch, and this is right up against the wood. Well, as you know, mulch holds moisture, and over time that wood will definitely rot. So my recommendation is pull all that mulch away from the house and paint that siding, because all the siding on this house was very dry and definitely needs to be painted. Okay, on the outside, we see this small crack right here. You see that right underneath this mortar joint. Typically, we see this on almost every house, but when we walk around the outside, we see this crack. We know to make a mental note to when we go to the inside, we want to look to make sure that that crack is as small there as it is on the inside as it is on the outside. Cracking is pretty common in the Midwest. It's from, we live in the Midwest and we have drastic temperature changes and the ground actually moves and the houses actually move. And this is just a stress crack. It's nothing structural. But a lot of home inspectors will make a huge ordeal out of that, and that they want structural engineers to check it. I think that's a bunch of BS, actually. There's really nothing wrong with that. So the same thing with this patio. If it was my flip or my rental, it is cracked. It could be a tripping hazard, but I wouldn't rip that out. I would actually just try to repair the cracks to prevent any further damage, because water can get down in those cracks, and then water gets down in there, it freezes, it heaves the concrete, and once it's heaved so far, it can't be repaired anymore. Then it would have to be replaced. All right, this is the part of an inspection where the city is going to require this more so than you wanting to do this, right? Because this door is the garage door. It's attached to the house. So this door needs to be fire rated. And where I'm pointing my finger at, that those hinges on a fire door are typically spring loaded. So meaning that when you go in and out of the garage, it's got an auto close on it. So in case your car's running in the garage, you run in the house and you forget the car's running in the garage, all that carbon monoxide is coming in the house. So it's there for your safety. I know they're a pain in the butt when you're carrying groceries in and the door keeps slamming in your face, but it's there for your protection. And remember that we showed you the crack on the outside of the house. This is the crack on the inside. Very small crack. Now, if there was water leaking or some type of residue that it was moist or something, then I would recommend that crack be fixed. But even if it was leaking, a crack like this would probably cost you anywhere from $350 to $500 to have it fixed. So it's what they do is they drill holes into the concrete and pump it with the I just went blank. Epoxy? Yeah, I think it's epoxy. And then they would fix that crack, and then there's a lifetime warranty on that as long as you own the house. I think a lot of them even will have lifetime warranty on the house itself on that particular crack. So I know Permaseal has a lifetime warranty that's attached to the address and not to the person. All right. Okay, so remember I was asking them if this was going to be a rental or a flip. As a rental, this type of flooring, this type of cabinet is fine as long as they work. For a flip, it's just not going to fly. So he would definitely need to change his vanity. But the reason for this picture is right next to my light here. The floor is really soft and the tile is kind of lifting up. So he's going to have to address that. Typically, if I was flipping this house, I would just fix this little section. And then I would just put new flooring right over the top, because if you've ever tried to pull this mosaic tile up, it's pretty labor intensive if it's installed properly in the beginning. So tip of the day. Electric, we always pull electric panel when possible. We just want to make sure that all these wires going in here into this panel are one wire per breaker. We want to make sure that the wire going to the breaker is the right size. The other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that you see these little tags next to the breaker here. We want to make sure that's labeled properly. Most villages will want all of the panel to be labeled by room. On my flips, I make my electrician do a laminated copy and then tape it to the inside of the panel door. So it's just kind of a safety thing because you want to know what breaker is for what room, right? So this is a 100 amp panel. That's the picture at the top. So I don't know, you vaguely see that's 100 amp, but if you ever buy a house that has a 60 amp panel or fuses, most villages will want it upgraded. The cost to change a panel is approximately $1,500. So you definitely want to make sure when you're doing your scope and then what you know that panel is okay and you don't have to change it, because that's kind of a lot of money for one little portion of your rehab. See here, I would just, a lot of this is faded. And then they have some of them that aren't labeled. So I would just, if your electrician's already there, which on this particular house, there's some electrical stuff, I would have that as part of my scope, that the electric panel is labeled. This is in the garage. This is, there's no cover. You can't have exposed wires sticking out of the junction box. Simple fix. I think it's 59 cents for a cover and a couple screws, and that's fixed. So, but my job to tell him that he has to do that. So, excuse me. The painters decided it'd be a good idea to paint over a lot of these outlets. This little tester I have here at the bottom, I couldn't get into half of the outlets. Most villages won't allow that. These all have to be free of paint. If it was me, I would change the plates and the outlets anyhow. So, but this outlet, right? Oh, go back up just a hair. This outlet right here is in the bathroom. That anything in a bathroom near a sink, like kitchens, laundry, bathroom sinks, all those outlets need to be what's called a GFCI outlet. It's like an outlet with a mini breaker. So if it senses water, it's basically to keep you from getting electrocuted. So there's like a mini breaker inside that outlet. So that's in the village, whether you want to do it or not, the village will never allow that. They'll make you change it. And with that being said, you just change the regular outlet to a GFI. The cost for a GFI outlet is probably about $25. Probably 90% of the houses, I always find at least a bad one. I've had brand new ones that are defective right out of the box. So not a big, huge fix. All right, these bottom ones, those bottom ones were for the kitchen. This one here on the top left, that's the laundry. Right to the left of that is the laundry sink. So the village will want that to be a GFI. The sump pump outlet, it has to either be a GFI, that's the one on the top right. It needs to be a GFI, or it has to be a dedicated single outlet. The village will make you do that. The bottom two here, these are garage outlets. Anything inside a garage, every outlet needs to be a GFI. And that's pretty much across the board. Most villages, well, I'm pretty sure all villages require that now. And the one thing it didn't have on this house was the outside outlets. There was none present, but just to give you the information is anything outside has to be a GFI, and it has to have a bubble cover, like a weatherproof cover over it, naturally because it's outside. So, and that's what the villages are going to require. Okay. This bottom, this picture right here, this is where the automatic garage door opener is plugged into. This either has to be GFI protected, or just like the sump pump, it has to have one single outlet. You can't have an outlet plugged in and then an open receptacle to where you can plug something else in. So if it was me, I would just change it to a single outlet. That's the cheapest. That's nothing. All right, so the bulb is just burned out in here. I was just telling them about it. I mean, typically that's what it is, but when it doesn't work and you put a bulb in it and then you say, well, I thought you said it was a bulb, that's why I put it in the inspection report. This is a smoke/carbon. It was in the hallway and it did not work. Most villages now, they want the smoke detectors in all the bedrooms. And there's smoke/carbon or just a carbon within 15 feet of a bedroom in the hallway. Typically, they want them to be wired in series, meaning that if one goes off, they all go off. And most towns will allow wireless, it's nice because it's $80 for a set of 2. You could program up to 16 of them on one circuit. Some villages, Lansing, I know for a fact, they will not allow wireless. They want hardwired, which is, to me, I don't understand why. Because I like the wireless ones. They work the same as the hardwired ones. And the batteries in the wireless and the new ones, they're supposed to be good for up to 10 years. Oh, and another thing, I would always try to recommend putting a smoke/carbon somewhere near the furnace if it's not on the same level or near the other carbon. So, excuse me. This pipe running in the closet is in one of the bedrooms. Village is never going to allow that. This is the vent actually for the fireplace. So when you're running your fireplace and your kid's playing in the closet, he's going to burn himself on that. So they're going to want that. You probably have to put a wall with drywall around it. Keep it from people getting burned. All right, the air conditioner was it was too cold. We don't turn air conditioners or test air conditioners when it's below 65 degrees. You can damage the coil. But as you can see by the front of this is the outside coil. It doesn't look like it's ever been cleaned or serviced for that matter. The furnace did work fairly good. I used to think when I had to flip a house, I would have to change the furnace and air conditioner. I don't anymore. I've changed my thought process on that. As long as both units work and they're clean and they're serviced, I don't replace them anymore. But on this is just a matter of taking a hose and just rinsing the coil off, because this air conditioning unit cannot breathe. There's so much debris on there. It'd be like trying to suck air through a clogged straw. Kind of what you're trying to accomplish there. So the motor has to work harder and it's going to wear out prematurely. Even on your own personal home, that should be cleaned once a year. And I would also recommend your furnace to be cleaned once a year. Okay. Plumbing was in good shape. I believe this is the sump pump. It did work, but the bearings were shot in it. So when it did turn on, when I tested it, it squealed really, really loud. So I would recommend changing the sump pump. The plumbing pipes, these are chrome P-traps underneath the sinks in the kitchen and in the bathroom. I'm not a fan of them. They rust from the inside out. They usually rust on the bottom. This bottom right picture, you can see how corroded that trap is. That's what's going to happen over time. So on all of my rentals, my flips, I always change that to plastic. It's a pretty inexpensive fix, and you don't ever have to worry about it rusting out. This toilet was super loose. If he's doing a flip, he should replace the toilet anyhow. For a rental, I suggest Glacier Bays. I like Glacier Bay. They're $90 for the whole kit. For rentals, I've tried to stop them up with the big, huge wads of toilet paper, and very, very, very difficult to get them to plug up. So that's why I like them. The bathtub drained really slow, so he's going to need to have a plumber rod the tub out. The faucet in the tub area was old, and when I turned it on, it was leaking pretty bad. My recommendation, because when I used to do my flips, I would gut a bathroom, get rid of the tile, the tub, everything, and start from scratch. I don't do that anymore. If the tile's intact, I would spray the tile down and glaze it, and the same thing with the tub. It's way cheaper to, I think the last house I did with the sprayed the tub and the tile enclosure was $650. You're talking just for a tub with labors, probably $500. Probably talking you demo that whole tile area and retile it, probably a few $1,000s. So just a tip for in the future. This is the shower in the basement or in the downstairs. Typo. Some of the tiles in the shower are loose. Now, if you're going to spray that, what I like about these glazers is they'll fix any of the bad grout. If you have any holes in the tile, they'll fill them before they do the spraying. So when they're done, that tile would look like brand new, and you would never know. Nobody would know the difference. I was pretty impressed with the whole process. All right, so his original scope of work, he was going to replace all the windows. His scope is, his budget for the scope was pretty minimal. So what I recommended to him was, because all the windows upstairs open and close, but they're wood, they're old, they have old screens, old storm windows, but they open and close. That's all that you're really required to do. Now all of the downstairs windows were painted where they had, I couldn't get them open, but I think that with a little finesse, you'd be able to just break the paint loose and they should open. So, all right, doors should latch. These two doors did not latch to where they closed properly, so they just need a minor adjustment. And that's just the fireplace. I thought there was a problem with it, but we were able to get it lit. So there's nothing wrong with that. In rentals, though, I do not like fireplaces. So if that was going to be a rental, I would cap that off. Most villages will not allow porcelain light fixtures in a closet. I know nowadays they have LED bulbs that don't get that hot, but the reason being is people store blankets and clothing and stack it to the ceiling, and the bulb gets hot, it causes fires. So that's the reason. So here's the attic. See, remember I was telling you about there's no soffit vents earlier. Well, you can see the sheeting up in the attic itself is discoloring a little bit. And in the top picture, all the way in the back, it's pretty black back there. It's not to where I would call it out as mold. I would call it discoloration. But the reason that that's happening and it's starting to discolor is because it's not breathing properly. So somebody had already, you could see where there's insulation missing, and they started adding insulation. That's great, but if you don't get that attic to breathe properly, you're going to just have nothing but problems in the future. And this is a picture of the crawl space. I typically will take pictures of the attic, the roof, the crawl space, because typically you're not going to go in there. So I take pictures just for FYI. There's nothing wrong down here. We like that we see insulation all along the walls. Take a picture of the beam, the column, and it all looks good. It's just, this was for an FYI, just for their information. And the attic gets insulated, so we would want the door getting into the attic. That's all just a piece of drywall with some trim around it. That should actually be insulated, because all your heat and your air conditioning, all of that, it's going to go right out that. So that's, I always recommend that gets insulated, which is an easy fix. And I think that's it, Hugo. And then at the end of my report, there's a summary about everything, all the repairs that need to happen on the last couple pages. So if you couldn't remember exactly where something was at the summary, the last 2-3 pages, it kind of tells you everything that we just talked about. So that's all I got, Hugo.
Awesome, George. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, George?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, guys, we're going to do something really amazing with this property. So now what we're going to do is, let's pretend we're the buyers of this property, and we're going to see if it makes sense to do a flip or a rental. So first of all, this property is in Homewood. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to put our pro hats and analyze this deal in less than 5 minutes. So first of all, this property is in Homewood. So the first thing that you need to go is to area reports. We're going to find out what Homewood is all about. Because friends, when you look at a property, you need to make sure that you understand the area like the back of your hand, okay? If you don't, you're asking for trouble. So the number one thing that you want to know is about Homewood, what type of area is this, right? Is this an A, B, C, D area? A being the best, D being like a war zone, right? So we're going to scroll down. We show you the geographic location, and then some factors that are going to affect your property values, appreciation. But most importantly, we give you the area in a nutshell. So the livability score is 79. Anything over 70%, it's a great area. So for sure, this is a B plus area. As you can see, everything, all the amenities, cost of living, education, everything is A plus except employment. So there are not enough sources of employment in Homewood. But other than that, it's a great area. So the next thing that you need to know, friends, is if you're going to do a flip, how much should I pay for a single family home? Okay, that's number one. Number two, how long is the property going to stay on the market if I'm going to do a flip? Now, if you do a rental, what are the ongoing rents? This is a 3-bedroom property, so how much am I going to be collecting for rent? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is just the summary in detail for the crime, household income, population growth. So everything is really good. I'm going to take you down to the summary. So this is a B area right here, and it's we recommend a flip approach. And everything that you saw up above is going to be summarized right here. But this is a great area, friends. We recommend flips. Now, this is where it comes to like the really important numbers that you need to know. So we're going to analyze the 2 to 4 attached and detached. So the subject property is a single family home. So detached. The first thing that I told you that you need to know is how much should you pay for a single family home? Friends, you've got to pay less than $145. This property is currently under contract for $155. So right off the bat, you're overpaying by $10,000. Now, look at this, average sold market time. So if you do a flip, the market time is gonna be at least 3 months, okay? And then there are a lot of flips, but not for single family homes, only for condos or attached properties, okay? Now, if you convert these to a rental, if you plan to do a rental, how much are you gonna be collecting for rent? For a 3-bedroom, it's gonna be about $1,450. And then it's gonna stay in the market for about a month and a half. So now that you have good understanding, let's do a quick power search on this property. So the property is, this is the address, Homewood. So we're gonna pull this up, boom. So this is the property. It was originally listed for 170. Now the lease price was 156, so it's under contract for 555. So the investor is almost paying asking price. And then based on our market research, you shouldn't pay more than 145 for the property. So friends, now to analyze the deal, we're gonna analyze this in less than 1 minute. There are 3 numbers that you need to know. Number 1, the ARV, after repair value. So once you do all the repairs, how much will this property be worth? The second thing that you need to know is the rehab. How much will you be spending? We give you this range based on a light to medium rehab in Homewood for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet. So the investor thinks that he's gonna spend $25,000. It's not gonna happen, especially if he needs to do the roof. The roof is gonna be about $10,000. Everything that George showed is not gonna be $15,000. It's gonna be a lot more because you need to touch the kitchen, the bathrooms, the windows, and the mechanicals, the HVAC. That's huge. And then the coloration in the attic. So it's gonna go way over 15,000 plus 10,000 for the roof. So here's what we have, right? So these are the 2 numbers so far, ARV, rehab. The third number that you need to nail very accurately is how much should you offer for this property? Well, we tell you that number based on your exit strategy. If you're gonna flip this property, you need to pay no more than 106, rental 127, wholesale 96. So friends, right off the bat, this property is not worth 230. Therefore, for a flip, you should not pay more than 106. It is that simple. So we analyze this deal in less than 2 minutes. Now, why 106? Because you need to make at least 20% profit on the flip. What this means is if you sell it for 204, you need to make 20% of that, 40,000 on the flip. If you're not gonna make 40,000 on the flip, you shouldn't even do it. As you can see, the offer price for a rental is more forgiving. You can pay up to 127. Remember, the investor is paying 155, so it's just not gonna work. Wholesale is obviously a lot less. So friends, it is so simple. Now what we can do is, let me show you. We run this on a nightly basis to give you the ARV, but we can run this like right now with a click of a button. Search. All I need to do is pull all the comps that sold in the last 6 months within a 1-mile radius with a similar square footage. Boom, we got all these properties. What I'm going to do is look at the last column. It says close price. This is how much they sold for. We're gonna remove the outliers. So this one for 142, obviously it's not rehab, so I'm gonna remove that. And then there's another one for 165. I'm gonna remove that. And there's one super expensive for 250. Just for sakes, I'm gonna click on the $250,000 property and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. So the rehab on this property is like over 60,000. Everything is like extremely nice, like all the bells and whistles, friends. So imagine from the report that you saw to make the property look like this one is gonna take no less than 60,000. So this property, we're gonna remove 250. So when we remove the outliers, we recompute the ARV. So the ARV came up at 207, okay? Not 204, 207. So by no means, this property is worth 230,000. So the investor got the ARV wrong. It's 207. The rehab it's not going to be 25,000. It's going to be 30 to 45,000. So he got the second number wrong. And then finally, based on that number, the most for a flip that should be paid for this property is 109. So the third number, he got it wrong, so 155. So if you get one of these numbers wrong, you're going to lose money. If you get all these three numbers wrong, guess what, friends? You're in big time trouble. So it is that simple, friends, that you can analyze a deal with Chicago Deal Vault. So what we're going to do for you, friends, is for those of you on the line, we're going to give you a special offer.